I want to talk about Doctor Who. So that's what I'm going to do. I should say before we start that while the main crux of this video, and the reason that I'm making it, is the 60th anniversary specials that aired in November of last year, I'm also kind of going to be using this video as an opportunity to talk about my thoughts on the show as a whole. So if you're looking for something that's concise and gets to the point quickly, this ain't it, Chief. Don't be surprised when you're 10 minutes in and I haven't even mentioned the specials yet. Right, so, Doctor Who. You all know what Doctor Who is, I don't need to summarise. Doctor Who has been, let's say, a little unstable for the past decade, almost as if it's somewhat lost its identity. I mean, the show has been going for 60 years now. According to my analytics, that's more than twice the length that most of you watching this have existed for. Yeah, it's bound to have a few rough patches. I was born in 1996, which was the year of the Doctor Who TV movie, which I haven't seen, admittedly. I've been meaning to. I did order it online at one point, but I don't know, there must have been some kind of mix-up, because instead of a DVD of the Doctor Who TV movie, I was sent nothing. Yeah, true story. I literally was sent an empty package. So yeah, that's cool. Got a full refund though, so that's something. Other than the TV movie, this was during the wilderness years. Doctor Who hadn't been on the air since 1989 and wouldn't properly come back onto screens until 2005, when it was revived by Russell T Davies. Remember him, there's a small chance I'll bring him up later. Series 1 of the revived show starred Christopher Eccleston as the titular Doctor, Billie Piper as the titular Rose, and Simon Pegg.
Why don't you just get in your rocket and fuck off back to Legoland, you cunts?
Admittedly, I didn't watch Series 1 all that closely when it first aired. I sort of dipped in and out. I watched the first episode and was scared of the Autons. I watched the third episode and was scared of the literal zombies that scream, no less. Honestly, this one still scares me a little. And I was even scared of the Slitheen. Yeah, the Slitheen, the dopey, baby-faced green aliens that fart all the time.
Excuse me, do you mind not farting while I'm saving the world?
They went on to become way more prominent in the spin-off show, The Sarah Jane Adventures on CBBC, which was specifically aimed at a younger audience. And yeah, going back and watching Aliens of London now, the CGI is really dated and the practical costumes are still alright, but, you know, not really much compared to what we can do now. But despite all that, I did still find it scary when I first saw it. I mean, the scene when Rose and Harriet Jones are hiding in that room while the three Slitheen are literally hunting them, talking about how they know they're in there and they can smell them, that's flipping terrifying to a 9-year-old. The Doctor quickly rushes in and takes them all out with a fire extinguisher, but still, it was scary at the time. Do you know what didn't scare me, though? The empty child. It's weird, this was that one episode that terrified pretty much everyone else in my family, but not me. I mean, I see how it's, you know, like, objectively scary in a sense, but I was never personally scared by it. Maybe to some people, children are just inherently scary, I don't know. Not to me, though. I like children. I shouldn't do that. Anyway, yeah, Series 1, good. It definitely feels like one of the most complete package series of the revived show. Personally, I think that The Parting of the Ways has yet to be topped as a series finale. And at the very end, the Doctor regenerates. No longer played by Christopher Eccleston, the Doctor would from this point onwards be portrayed by the little-known actor David Tennant.
You, Chief. That's weird.
It's hard to say because it was about 20 years ago, but it's possible that the concept of regeneration is the main thing that turned me from a casual viewer into someone that watches this show full time, and I still do to this day. The idea of the main actor completely changing every few years is something that no other show does, or at least not in the same way that Doctor Who does. It's built into the core mechanics of the show, and it definitely wouldn't have lasted this long without it. It kind of means that it can't really get stale. It's always going to get a new light shone on it every few years, and it kind of teaches us that change isn't something to be afraid of. Despite playing the same person, every actor who's played the Doctor has put their own little spin on the character. I go back and forth as to who is my favourite Doctor all the time. I mean, more often than not, I think I seem to settle on the 12th Doctor, played by Peter Capaldi. To me, he kind of perfectly embodied all the aspects that I like about the character and managed to be irrefutably stellar, even when the episodes themselves were not. But I'll always have a soft spot for the 10th Doctor, David Tennant, being, in a sense, my first Doctor. And it's an understatement to say that 10 was pretty popular among the general public too. He just had this comforting charm to him. Even when he wasn't really trying to be, he just exuded this, as I believe the kids today say, riz Ohio Riz, is that right? He had this uncanny ability to just fit wherever he was, whoever he was with. I mean, it's clearly leaps and bounds beyond them in terms of intelligence and experience, but he embraced and admired everyone and everything around him, no matter how menial or unimportant they seemed. And everyone loved him for it. Everyone loved 10. The characters loved him, the writers loved him, the audience loved him. He loved him. I mean, there's an argument to be made that 10 had the most heightened sense of self-importance. And yeah, in some scenarios, I would agree with that. Take, for example, his 2 regenerations. Yeah, he got 2 of them, because the first time he did it, he was just like, no, actually, I don't want to change my face because I'm perfect. And then the second time, he's literally on the verge of tears because he doesn't have it out this time. This incarnation's last words were literally,
I don't want to go.
I mean, there's ego and then there's the 10th Doctor. But despite all that, it's undeniable how beloved and memorable the 10th Doctor was and how much of an impact he made. The 10th Doctor is almost, if not on the same level of iconic as the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker, with his teeth and curls, his long scarf, and his robot dog. I mean, 10 had the robot dog too, briefly. When 10 regenerated, the real time, the second time, people cried. And, that's nothing new now. Fans cry at every regeneration. But for 10, it sort of seemed less about the fact that they'll miss him and more about how they, like 10 himself, straight up didn't want him to go. And that reaction led to a less than favorable start for the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith. Okay, I want to settle a few of you guys who might have just stopped the video and thought, is he really going to go through every era of the revived show before talking about the 60th? Calm your boots. There's not actually a whole lot that I want to say on the Stephen Moffat era, that being the 11th and 12th Doctors respectively. There's some high highs and there's some pretty low lows. I'm looking at you, Series 7, Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. My god, what an abysmal piece of television that was. Clara's lost inside the TARDIS, so the Doctor recruits these 3 random dudes to help him find her. Otherwise, he's gonna blow up the TARDIS. Also, one of these guys is a robot, except no, he's actually not a robot. The other 2 just tricked him into thinking he was a robot because they were bored one day.
What?
There is a halfway decent scene where the Doctor confronts Clara about why he's met her multiple times before and she has no idea what he's talking about. It's a kind of nice scene that escalates the ongoing series arc surrounding the mystery of Clara. But literal reset button. Episode undone. The confrontation never happened and this guy still thinks he's a robot. What a waste of time. Series 7 is definitely one of those rough patches that I mentioned. And it's really strange because this series, or at least the majority of it, aired in 2013, the 50th anniversary of the show. And the 50th anniversary special is, well, it's spectacular. It really is, and I think it's clear that all the effort was being dedicated to this rather than the main series. The 50th has great writing, epic story beats, great emotional moments, and wait, what? Previous Doctor? David Tennant? What are you doing back? Billy Piper too, damn, but mostly David Tennant? Wow! This was by far the biggest selling point for the 50th. This was everywhere at the time. The 10th and 11th Doctors on screen at the same time. It was awesome. I'm sure it's a little weird considering there was an episode in Series 1 where Rose went back in time to stop her father dying and it sort of manifested these Ender Dragon things to come along and eat everybody. And then later that same episode, Rose met herself as a baby.
Don't touch the baby.
But she does, and it causes one of the dragons to appear inside the church and eat the Doctor. Yum yum. But yeah, I guess there's no issue with this. I mean, I know they're 2 different incarnations, but it is the same person, and there just seems to be no issue with the Doctor being around his past self. He can even touch himself. Nevertheless, it was really cool to see David Tennant back in the show, much to the joy of the fans who loved him when he was the current Doctor. It was, however, a little bittersweet for the actual current Doctor, Matt Smith, as it was announced earlier that year in June that his time as the Doctor was also coming to a close. He'd do the 50th in November, and he'd do the Christmas special in December. Obviously, when else would you do a Christmas special? And then that would be it. The 11th Doctor would regenerate into the 12th Doctor. But who would play the 12th Doctor? Well, I already said a few paragraphs ago, it would be none other than former ancient Roman Peter Capaldi.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe.
This was announced in August, 3 months before the 50th. Yeah, 2013 was kind of an eventful year for Doctor Who, to say the least. the highest point being the 50th anniversary itself. Like I said, it's spectacular. It really, really was, and it still is absolute peak Doctor Who in my eyes. Not just for bringing back the 10th Doctor, but for one glorious scene, using old footage, managing to bring back every single previous Doctor as they all swoop in with their TARDISes and band together to save Gallifrey from its pre-established and impending destruction. Wait, what the fuck? There are no words to describe the reaction that the No Sir All 13 scene gave me when watching the 50th live. It was the biggest you had to be there moment ever. I mean, it legitimately gives me goosebumps just even recalling it right now. What a genius idea to reveal who the next Doctor is to the general public months earlier, with the firm belief that we wouldn't actually see him on screen until the end of the Christmas special, and then to just go and throw in a shot of those iconic eyebrows a month earlier during one of Doctor Who's biggest events in history. Outstanding! This is Doctor Who. This is how great it can be. Oh, and then just a few minutes later, they just casually drop in the friggin' 4th Doctor, Tom Baker, in person. I mean, this dude didn't even return for the 20th anniversary special, The 5 Doctors, and they had to use footage from a cancelled episode of his and a waxwork model for the photo shoot. But hey, they got him for the 50th. Extraordinary. Okay, I am going to kind of breeze over the 12th Doctor's run, not really much to say on that. It's pretty good most of the time, and like I said, Peter Capaldi gives it his all 100% of the time. But what I really want to talk about now is the 13th Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, and her era of the show, ran by Chris Chibnall. We're getting to the 60th specials, I promise. Please just stick with me, we are nearly there. Right, so I'm not about to completely denigrate the Chibnall era here. Countless people have already done a good job of that. If you're interested, I'd recommend watching The Fall of Doctor Who by Jay Exey for a comprehensive rundown of all the problems with this era. It's a very good video. Because this era does have a lot of problems, and despite what some people may have you believe, the Doctor being played by a woman is actually not one of them. Like, this is fine. I like that decision, actually. Only, she doesn't actually have much of a character beyond the baseline superficial elements that already existed within the Doctor, and that is one of the things that lets it down. The last era showcased a great example of doing that right with the Master, who regenerated into female form and went by Missy, and she was undeniably great. In the last series, she even went through a character arc and changed as a person, and the finale ended up doing a multi-Master story, bringing back the previous Master, John Sim, and Missy went into an internal conflict where she had to confront who she was now versus the man that she used to be standing directly in front of her. It was great! The Doctor Falls really is an underrated series finale. I mean, it's up there with Parting of the Ways. You should definitely go and watch it. To be fair, the Chibnall era did take some bold swings and tried to attempt some character development in its second series after the Doctor found out that Gallifrey had been destroyed. Again, like, did we not just go through that whole ordeal to save Gallifrey, and now what, it's just destroyed again? Yeah, alright. Oh, and also with the Doctor eventually learning that she's not even from Gallifrey. She was found and adopted by some woman who did experiments on her and extracted her ability to regenerate and gave it to the Time Lords. Oh, and also she had her memories of this stolen by the Time Lords, meaning that this isn't technically the first Doctor, and she's not technically the 13th, although strictly speaking she wasn't anyway, because the numbering got all messed up when the 50th anniversary introduced another Doctor that came in between 8 and 9, and also, as I mentioned, 10 regenerated twice, meaning that the 11th Doctor had already regenerated the maximum number of times that a Time Lord could, and this was all explained in his final story where he thought he was actually going to die proper this time, but then the Time Lords appeared out of a huge crack and they granted him a load more regenerations, but as it turns out they didn't even need to do that because the Doctor never had a limit on regenerations because she's literally the origin of regeneration. The Time Lords only went and died anyway because the Master found all this out and he threw a hissy fit and blew them all up himself. The Chibnall era is a mess. In fact, I'd go so far as to call it bad. But I still kind of like it. I think that Chris was definitely a big idea guy when it comes to his stories, but the execution let it down most of the time. Despite its shortcomings, I did enjoy this era, and there were a lot of times where it was, dare I say, adequate. The 3 Dalek New Year specials were all pretty good. Spyfall was entertaining. Kablam was a fun ride. It Takes You Away was just absurd, but I kind of enjoyed it for that. The Haunting of Villa Diodati was a really competently written episode. And the 6-part miniseries Flux I found to be a really enjoyable and unique idea. although it is kind of telling that the two best episodes of those 6, War of the Sontarans and Village of the Angels, were the two that had almost nothing to do with the overarching plot and were more or less just standalone episodes. On that note, I appreciate how the Sontarans themselves were treated here, given that in the Moffat era they were a little besmirched and almost turned into joke villains like the Slitheen. The Sontarans are a little comical, yeah, you know, they're war-hungry potatoes, but you could still take them seriously as legitimate threats. Moffat essentially treated them all like Strax. And don't get me wrong, I love Strax. I think he's great, adorable, and his humor is even sometimes funny, even if he does run the same few jokes into the ground all the time. But I think it's clear that Strax is like a rogue, almost disgraced Sontaran who isn't really associated with the rest of his kind. He's one who helps the Doctor and just hangs out with a Silurian called Madame Vastra and her human wife Jenny, and they solve mysteries in Victorian England. I mean, that's brilliant. Like, I'd love to see these three come back one day. But Strax himself shouldn't be the blueprint for all Sontarans. So I like that Flux kind of brought the Sontarans back to their former glory, making them an actual threat, while still keeping some of the comedic nature where appropriate.
But why here?
The Crimean skirmish seems the perfect place to start. So much opportunity. And also, I wanted to ride a horse.
Oh, and definitely one of the highlights of this era for me was the aforementioned Master, now played by Sacha Dhawan. He's just amazing. His reveal at the end of Spyfall Part 1 was, if I may be so jovial, masterfully handled. In fact, I think I'd go ahead and say that the 8th Master, at least I think he's the 8th, I don't know who keeps track of the Masters, might just be my favourite Master. Although, as I mentioned, I haven't seen the TV movie, but based on what I've heard, I doubt Eric Roberts will be stealing that top spot. Sacha Dhawan is just great in the role. He's cunning and devious, he has a great rapport with the Doctor, and on the occasions where he's angry and manic, it's genuinely a little scary. Does it kind of undermine and ignore the character progression that Missy went through in the last era? Yeah. But there's no denying how entertaining this Master is. Oh, and he's really funny too. I mean, who could forget the iconic scene in the final episode, The Power of the Doctor, where he has the Doctor locked up and then just starts dancing to Rasputin surrounded by Daleks and Cybermen. That's just brilliant. The Master was undoubtedly the MVP of this whole episode. But alas, The Power of the Doctor did mark the end of the Chris Chibnall era and the 13th Doctor herself. As always, the new actor to take over the role was announced months beforehand, and this time it would be Ncuti Gatwa. Yeah, alright. I mean, would I have liked it to be a woman again? Yeah. I feel like going immediately back to a male Doctor would kind of have the adverse effect of making the only time the Doctor was a woman, at least an official Doctor, was the time when the show was seen as not so great by a lot of viewers, and thus they would never attempt it again. But, you know, only time will prove me wrong on that. And hey, first black actor to play the Doctor? At least an official Doctor? That's pretty good. And so, we all eagerly watched The Power of the Doctor and awaited the moment that Jodie Whittaker would regenerate into Ncuti Gatwa. Oh. Oh! Okay. Now we can talk about the 60th.
You come out of that into the forward position.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to tell us what you want to do.
Did exactly as I did last time. I know these teeth.
What? He's back? Why is he back? Why does he always come back? David Tennant is William Afton confirmed. This was not as much of a surprise to some people as it was to me. I mean, sure, I'd heard that not only David Tennant, but also Catherine Tate, who played fan-favourite companion Donna Noble, were both coming back to the show for the 60th anniversary specials. But nowhere did it state that David would actually be the Doctor again. For all we knew, this could have been like some flashback, or alternate timeline, or even another multi-Doctor story, which, you know, they tend to do for the anniversary specials. David knows this all too well. But it's one thing having him come back alongside the current Doctor. It's another thing entirely to have him become the current Doctor. That's seemingly what happened, though. In the words of the now current showrunner,
he's not a pretend Doctor, he's not a cheap, he's not a plan by the trickster or something, he is genuinely the 14th Doctor.
Hang on a mo, is that Russell the Davis? He's back too, blimey to the moon. See, this is where those fears began to emerge. You know, from the video title. As cool as it is to have all these guys back, I was worried. As I talked about, one of Doctor Who's major philosophies is about embracing change. It's why regenerations are the most exciting parts of the show, because it's a chance to begin anew. Not to forget what came before, but to move forward with a fresh new outlook. You'd think partnering with Disney would mean that idea wouldn't be lost, but, then again, this doesn't exactly represent Disney nowadays. But to go back to a previous Doctor, bring back a fan-favorite companion from one of the most popular series of the revival, bring the old showrunner back, this isn't moving forward, this is reverting. Not so much a literal reset button, but more a go back to when most people would agree the show was pretty good and kind of brush everything that came after that under the rug button. This flies directly in the face of what Doctor Who is, who the Doctor is. The Doctor doesn't do this. He can encounter a previous face show, but he doesn't become them again. That's not the way it works. The Doctor is Doctor Who. He represents the show. He visits history. He doesn't live there. He moves on because he has to. But this, it really felt like the show was just throwing its hands up and saying, okay, yeah, we know it's not been great recently, so let's just go back to when it was. And that's not healthy. I mean, yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of the previous era, but it's part of Doctor Who now. You can't just ignore it or pretend it never happened. And seriously, David Tennant again, I know he's a beloved Doctor. I love him. But you gotta let him go, Russell. But yeah, nevertheless, Russell is a competent writer. As fearful as I am, I'm confident that he can deliver something worthwhile here for the 60th anniversary. And besides, the Doctor returning to one of his previous faces is a mystery in and of itself, and so surely the 60th specials are going to give some satisfying reason as to why that happened, right? Right? So let's get into that. I'm not going to do super in-depth reviews of the 3 episodes or anything. I'm basically just going to talk about a few noteworthy things in each of them and, things that relate to the broader point that I'm trying to make in this video. Yes, I actually do have a point. So when I went back and rewatched this episode for this video, I knew full well that this was my least favorite of the 3, and yeah, that still stands, but this is far, far from a bad episode. It's got good action set pieces, it's got good comedy, the Beep the Meep animatronic is really impressive. I actually thought it was CGI for the longest time, but it's not. Well, some of the facial animations are done in CGI for the final cut, but it's genuinely a fully movable thing, that someone sits inside. It's really cool. There is a lot to enjoy in this episode, but there are a couple things that just sort of bug me. Let's start at the very beginning. The episode opens with this recap segment with the Doctor on a green screen space background talking to camera about what happened to Donna. It also has some shots of Donna sat at her kitchen table talking about her vague fleeting memories and how she feels like something is missing from her life. This is stupid. Now, okay, yeah, I realize that some viewers need to be caught up to speed on what happened in Series 4 if they either don't remember it or maybe they didn't even watch it. I get that. So if you don't know the story of Donna, basically, she was a companion of the 10th Doctor during Series 4 in 2008. So remember how 10 had that fake-out regeneration thing? Well, the only reason that he was able to do that was because he got his hand cut off in his very first story, and a whole mess of stuff happened with that with Captain Jack and the Master, and now it's on board the TARDIS. So he siphons off a load of the regeneration energy into that hand, and then later that episode, Donna's about to die, and so she touches the magic hand and it grows into another full Doctor.
Instantaneous biological metacrisis.
The two of them now kind of share a consciousness or something, which is, fine for the Doctor. It means that he just acts like Donna sometimes, but for Donna, her puny human mind was too small for all that Time Lord cleverness to fit in, and so it was going to kill her. So the Doctor wiped her mind completely of him and all the adventures that they went on, and she went back to the Donna that never met the Doctor, and if she ever remembers it, then she will die. There. Now you don't have to watch the stupid intro. I think the reason it bugs me is because it's just exposition to the audience directly. And there are 3 other scenes in this episode that do a much better job of that. One of these scenes is the one with the Doctor and Shirley. I really like this scene. I like how even though these two have never actually met before, they just instantly get on. Shirley obviously knows who the Doctor is, but she thinks she's talking to the 10th Doctor as opposed to this Doctor, which I guess is the 14th. And he tells her how it's really bad if Donna sees him because obviously this is the face that Donna remembers as the Doctor. He basically explains the entire backstory to Shirley because this is obviously going through his mind and Shirley's there to listen. It's natural exposition and it works so much better than that recap bit at the start. Another scene that really works is the Doctor talking to Donna's husband Sean in the taxi. The Doctor pretends to know Donna and thus gets Sean to talk about what's been happening to her recently. Again, natural exposition. And also, I like that we get to see a lot more of Sean in this episode. Like, he only had a very fleeting appearance in The End of Time, and him and the Doctor never actually met. And he's really good in this episode. I love how he just sort of goes along with everything. He doesn't object or make a fuss, he's just like, yeah, this is my family, up to their wacky antics again. And the third scene is the one where Donna is sat at her kitchen table talking about her vague fleeting memories and how she feels like something is missing from her life. Wait a second. Only difference here is that she's talking to her mum and not a camera lens. But yeah, like I said, that whole thing just bugged me. And I'll tell you something else that bugged me in this episode. Sorry, I'm not trying to be negative all the time. This is a really good episode. I do really like it. But one thing I really don't like is how flippant the Doctor becomes about Donna's memory as the episode goes along. He bumps into her right at the start and immediately he's just like, nope. And that's good, obviously.
Because if she remembers just for a second, she'll burn up.
If she ever remembers me, her mind will burn and she will die.
If she ever remembers me, she will die. Because if Donna ever remembers me, she will die.
But as the episode goes along and he gets just dragged into it all, he seems to just forget that Donna's not allowed to remember him, and he starts almost making it obvious.
You got two hearts. So do I.
You've got what?
This is a sonic screwdriver.
Doctor! What are you doing? Okay, maybe you can argue that he knows the limits he can push it to before she actually remembers him, but going back to The End of Time for a second, in that episode, Donna is slowly surrounded by a load of masters. And keep in mind, she never met the master, the Doctor's not around, there are no actual aliens present right here and now, but even this is enough to remind her of similar weird events, and she starts to remember different creatures she's seen. And what happens to her?
What did I...
Granted, yes, this doesn't kill her, she's fine by the end of the episode, but Doctor, do you really want that to happen again? In this enclosed attic space? With you and her family? As there are soldiers actively looking for you on the street outside? Methinks not, sir.
But she can't remember. This is a sonic screwdriver. I won't be the one who kills her.
It's very frustrating, and it actually makes Sylvia look like the most sane person in the room. She's actually trying to stop her daughter's mind from exploding, while the Doctor just seems indifferent. But obviously at the end of the episode, Donna sacrifices herself to purposely get her memories back so that she can become Super Time Lord Clever again and help the Doctor save London, before it ultimately does kill her. Except no, it doesn't. And this is where we talk about Rose. No, not that Rose, this Rose, Donna's daughter. She was also announced a while back to be played by Yasmin Finney, a trans actress, and Rose herself is also a trans character. So that's cool, as much as it seems to rustle the feathers of chronically online weirdos.
No, I am not a biologist, but I did take a biology class in high school, and I'm also not retarded.
How do you say this unironically? How do you not know what you sound like when you... Oh, Jesus Christ. But this is actually relevant to the story because she ends up saving the Doctor and Donna because she's also Super Time Lord Clever. Being Donna's daughter meant that the Metacrisis stuff was passed down to her and the two of them share it. So Donna doesn't die. Not only that, but Rose also has the vague fleeting memories of Donna's adventures with the Doctor. She makes toys that resemble the alien creatures in a shed which resembles the TARDIS. And the best bit... her name is Rose. When it was first announced that Donna would have a daughter called Rose, a lot of us went, oh, come on, Rose? A bit on the nose. And we just sort of explained it away as, oh yeah, maybe Donna just has some small recollection of meeting someone called Rose and she just liked the name. Except then you remember, Rose is trans, so in all likelihood she probably wasn't called Rose from birth. And that was confirmed in the episode. Her name was not always Rose. Rose chose Rose. Because Rose remembered Rose. The signs were there all along and we didn't put it together. I really like this twist. It is genuinely clever and everything fits really nicely. But then it kind of gets a bit iffy. The episode goes even further and it sort of suggests that Rose being trans is actually a factor in why the Metacrisis thing works here. Because Rose is trans, she represents both male and female, and the Doctor has also been both male and female, and they do some little pun with the binary, non-binary thing, even though the only reason the binary thing was a thing was because Donna was telling the Doctor how to fix the chameleon circuit and her brain got stuck on that one word. It has nothing to do with the gender binary. story. And on top of that, okay, I'm not an expert on the topic, so forgive me, but Rose is clearly supposed to be a trans woman, right? Isn't that different from non-binary? Non-binary is something else, right? It's still trans, but it's like a different kind of trans to the kind Rose is supposed to be, so I don't really get that either. The implication is seemingly either Rose could only adopt the Metacrisis consciousness stuff because she's trans, or she's trans because of the Metacrisis, which is a kind of strange implication. Is the Doctor the cause of Rose's transness? Did the Doctor indoctrinate Rose? Oh, and then we get to this infamous scene.
We've still got to fix you two. Because the Metacrisis might have slowed down, but that thing is wrapped around your cortex.
Yes, we know. We know everything. It's a shame you're not a woman anymore. She'd have understood. There is a way to get rid of it. Something a male-presenting Time Lord will never understand. Just let it go.
This is that one clip that everyone used as a flimsy case for how woke Doctor Who has become or whatever. Well, that and the bit where the Doctor asked Beep the Meep for its pronouns. And that was fine. And to be fair, the Doctor actually was wrong for assuming he. But I don't know if I can make much of a rebuttal to this scene. I mean, the let it go thing, I suppose, is a kind of harmless jab, but the Doctor was literally a woman in the last episode. You were just talking about how he represents both male and female, and then you belittle him because of his current gender presentation, which, by the way, is clearly out of his control. Then again, it's Donna. She likes to take him down a peg, I suppose. So yeah, they let it go, and then Donna gets to keep her memories and not die. An argument I've seen thrown around is that this kind of undermines or lessens the impact of Donna's initial departure in Journey's End. But I don't know if I agree with that. That still happened. The impact is still felt. I mean, Russell did exactly the same thing with Rose, Blonde Rose, I mean Rose Tyler, in that exact episode. Would you say that letting Rose live out her life with the spare Metacrisis 10th Doctor at the end of Series 4 takes away from the impact of her initial departure at the end of Series 2? Because I don't know about you, but I can still watch Doomsday and absolutely bawl my eyes out. I think for the most part, it just seems like Russell likes to give his characters happy endings. And ultimately, is that not what we want for them too? Okay, yeah, so that was the Star Beast. Did not think I'd spend so long on that one. Wild Blue Yonder is fantastic. It really is. It's a brilliant episode, no notes. It's funny, the first time you watch an episode, you can't really take it all in. Your brain does its best to keep up with the story and mostly focuses on the visual side. There are very few action sequences in this episode. It is very dialogue heavy. And rewatching it, knowing how it all plays out, you're able to pay so much more attention to that amazing dialogue. Wild Blue Yonder is incredibly well written, and the dialogue absolutely carries it through and through. Aside from the very beginning and the very end, this is just purely David Tennant and Catherine Tate for 50 minutes. And it works. It's comparable to Heaven Sent in Series 9. That episode was essentially just Peter Capaldi from start to end. Sounds like a terrible idea, but when you've got good writing and good direction and a great actor to pull it off, it ends up being one of, if not the best 12th Doctor episode. And the same is true here. I don't think it would be unfair to call Wild Blue Yonder the best 14th Doctor episode. It's so good. You're also able to pick up on very minuscule details on a rewatch. Like how at the start, Donna mistakenly calls the song Wide Blue Yonder. I thought I misheard her, but I put on the subtitles and yeah, she does say wide. And then shortly after, the Doctor corrects her by saying that the words are Wild Blue Yonder. Another one is how, because the TARDIS disappears partway through due to the HADs, which, is a nice little callback, by the way, it's not there to translate any of the words said over the speaker. Because if it did, it would be obvious immediately to the characters and the audience that those are numbers counting down. But then, during the final chase sequence where the countdown is sped up, the TARDIS arrives and the speaker says the number 1 in English. And then when the Doctor takes the wrong Donna and leaves, it stops translating, and 0 is said in the alien language again. That attention to detail is something that I really appreciate. I also really like the general atmosphere of this episode. It's hard to describe, but for some reason it really reminds me of WALL-E in a weird way. It's like tranquil sci-fi, if that makes any sense. The CGI on this episode is also really impressive. The huge long corridor is almost entirely digitally made, and it looks very convincing. It's really interesting the way they did it as well, how they sort of had the digital corridor kind of viewable in real time as they were filming. It's fascinating stuff. There's a lot to really appreciate about Wild Blue Yonder. But there is something specific that I want to talk about that happened in this episode. No, I'm not talking about the lovely reunion with Wilf at the very end. Rest in peace, Bernard Cribbins. I'm not talking about the Not Doctor's weird contortionist act that teeters right between unsettling and hilarious. Nor am I talking about the profoundly somber fake-out death scene with Donna just after the Doctor leaves her behind. A scene which, initially, I wasn't a big fan of. I mean, we just did a fake-out death with Donna in the last episode, but I thought, yeah, if anything, it would maybe lead to Donna realizing that she doesn't want to go traveling full-time with the Doctor anymore like she did in the past. She's got a family waiting for her at home. She can't really be risking death every week. But no, it's none of that. What I want to talk about here is bigger than any of that. Something happened about halfway through this episode that shocked me so much that I decided to make a YouTube video based around it just to have an excuse to talk about it. Yeah, this moment is the main reason this video exists. And this is the moment I'm talking about. For context, in this episode, the Doctor and Donna are being terrorized by creatures that can mimic them perfectly. They even have the thoughts and memories of the Doctor and Donna, making it incredibly difficult to tell them apart from the real ones. After a daring escape, the Doctor and Donna get separated, and this leads to 2 simultaneous scenes wherein both of them, a Doctor encounters a Donna. Now at this point, even the audience doesn't know which of them are real. So naturally, they start asking each other questions to try and prove who is real and who isn't. And then this happens.
So where are you from?
No, but we've done that. We talked about that. Back there out loud. All 4 of us know it's Gallifrey.
Except it's not. You don't know where you're from.
But we haven't stopped to talk. We haven't had a chance. It's always like that with you. Running from one thing to the next. I saw it. The flux.
It destroyed half the universe because of me. We stand here now on the edge of creation, a creation which I devastated. So yes, I keep running. Of course I do. How am I supposed to look back on that?
It wasn't your fault.
I know!
Let me tell you, I was shook after that to my very core. And I was delighted. In that one moment, all those fears I spoke about began to evaporate. Here I was, thinking that all of this, the 60th, bringing back David and Catherine and Russell, was a cheap and easy way to bring back fans who maybe had stopped watching the show in the past few years. And yeah, maybe to an extent it was. But here was the 60th specials, halfway through, pulling the rug out from under us and saying, all that stuff that happened in the last era, we're not ignoring it. We're not pretending it didn't happen. We're bringing it back. To be honest, I wouldn't have blamed Russell for ignoring it. When a new showrunner takes over, there is a pattern of kind of overwriting a little what the last one did. You know, Moffat made a lot of the events in Russell's first era literally get erased from existence. He undid the Time War, Chibnall destroyed Gallifrey again, and rewrote the Doctor's entire origin story. And yet here was Russell, back again, not only acknowledging what Chibnall did, but embracing it. Taking the big ideas that he set up to fuel the characters in his stories. And that's extraordinary. This made it clear as day that despite from the outside looking like Series 4 again, same characters, same writer, same Doctor, this is not Series 4 again. So much has happened since then, and this is something new. Okay, if you'll allow me for a second, I'd like to go on a small tangent and talk about a completely different franchise. One that, if you know me and my channel, you may know that I have, let's say, a small fondness for. It's called Crash Bandicoot.
Cortex.
Don't worry, this is related, I promise, it is. So, Crash Bandicoot had an original run of games on the PlayStation 1. Crash Bandicoot 2, and Crash Bandicoot Warped. Oh, and also a racing game called Crash Team Racing. After that, the series was handed off to multiple different developers who made multiple new games in the preceding years. And while these games had their fans, me being one of them, I love a lot of these games, there was no denying that none of them quite reached that same peak that the first 4 games did. After 2008, Crash Bandicoot entered its own wilderness years. We heard nothing for almost a decade, until mid-2016 it was announced that they would be remaking the original trilogy for PlayStation 4. And I was pleased, obviously, more Crash Bandicoot. But there was that niggling feeling in the back of my mind saying, what about the other games? What about the ones that came after the originals? Are we just ignoring them? Not that I wanted them to be remade too, but it did kind of feel like the series was pushing them to the side in favor of going back to what was deemed the good ones. The remakes came out, and yeah, they were pretty good. By the books, sure, but they did the job. And then a year later, it was announced that they would also be remaking Crash Team Racing. Because of course, you know, the last of the good ones. Why wouldn't they? But then, something unexpected happened. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled did something that a lot of us didn't see coming. See, not only was Nitro Fueled a remake of the original Crash Team Racing, but they also announced that they were remaking a lot of the racetracks from Crash Nitro Kart, a later game in the Crash franchise that came out in the PlayStation 2 era. Not only that, but they'd also be coming with all the additional characters from Crash Nitro Kart as well. And this was unprecedented. A new Crash game was actually acknowledging games that came out after the originals. And then they just kept going. They went even further. They announced the Grand Prix, monthly events that would bring in entirely new tracks, karts, and most excitingly, new characters. Not just the original trilogy characters like Embryo, Torna, Koala Kong, but also characters from later games. Rillaroo from Crash Bash, Nina from Twinsanity onwards, Pasadena and Von Clutch from Crash Tag Team Racing. Freaking Megamix was here, an obscure secret boss from one of the Game Boy Advance games. Even Yaya Panda, a character that even some dedicated Crash fans had never even heard of from some really obscure Crash mobile game, was being brought back. For the first time since its return, Crash Bandicoot was being treated as not just those beloved 4 games from the PS1, but as a huge, full franchise. And it was absolutely amazing to see. So you can imagine how ecstatic I was to see Doctor Who going through a similar thing. The past was not being erased. The show wasn't reverting. It was moving forward. And I think what's even more extraordinary is how the Doctor himself reacts to this. The Not Things say this purposely to break him down, to get him to open up about everything he's been through, and then they mock him for it. And they go even further with it in the following episode. I'm sorry for skipping ahead a bit, but in The Giggle, the toy maker puts on a puppet show with the Doctor's previous companions in the Stephen Moffat era, Amy, Clara, and Bill, and how each of them died. There were caveats, yes, but they did all die because of traveling with the Doctor. And then the Flux, which was created because the Doctor left Gallifrey, destroyed half of the universe. And the Toymaker showcases all this to mess with the Doctor, to break him down. All of this, everything that happened to the Doctor since 2008, this is trauma for the Doctor. And this is where everything started to fit in place. And I realized exactly what the 60th anniversary was doing, what the whole point was. But to really get into that, we need to properly move on to the next episode. So yeah, I'm going to have to leave it there for the Wild Blue Yonder section. Just remember, very good episode.
If I had to give this episode a score, I guess I would give it a 50 out of 100, which means that it's a fail.
The Giggle is a really great episode. I do still prefer Wild Blue Yonder, but that one fits more in line with those kind of one-off special type episodes of Doctor Who, you know, like Midnight or Heaven Sent or Blink. The Giggle feels much more like a great showcase of all the things that Doctor Who is about. So much happens in this one episode. I'm not even worried about accidentally repeating clips on that screen up there because of just the sheer amount that happens in this episode. It is jam-packed to the teeth. We got scale, we got returning characters, we got spectacle, comedy, horror, emotion, social commentary, time travel. We got Neil Patrick Harris, for God's sake. And he absolutely slays. And I know I'm using that term correctly. Oh, the spice up your life scene. It's the greatest Doctor Who moment since... well, probably since Rasputin the year before, I suppose. The Toymaker is a spectacular villain. I really love when Doctor Who dips its toe into the supernatural. I mean, yeah, we've had like ghosts and werewolves and vampires and stuff, but they were all still creatures from our reality. The Toymaker, on the other hand, is more akin to things like the gods from Can You Hear Me? Or, you know, Satan.
Thanks, Satan.
The Toymaker exists in a reality beyond our own, and he just is, and he just does. And it can't be explained with any 21st century understanding of science. He's kind of like the genie from Aladdin in that respect. Except all he cares about is games. As he puts it,
because you're good and you're bad are nothing to me. All that exists is to win or to lose.
He's also racist, which is kind of in keeping with the first time he appeared in 1966, I suppose. He was originally called the Celestial Toymaker, and Celestial, in that sense, had some racial connotations, so it's understandable that they kind of dropped that part of his name here. But I like that they do still make reference to it with this line.
We can be celestial.
Unfortunately, though, like with the Star Beast, the episode's not perfect. But thankfully, there's only really one issue I have with this episode, and surprisingly, it's not the bi-generation. I actually have no qualms with that at all, no. The main issue that I have with the giggle is the giggle itself. It just doesn't make sense to me. Not really like the technical side of it, I can buy that it was embedded into the first face on television and it's been hiding in the subconscious of every human who's ever looked at a screen, and something with a Korean satellite linking every person on Earth. Whatever, that's all fine. Now, I love me some good social commentary, and Doctor Who is usually very good at it, at least, in a competent writer's hands, and Russell's first era was rife with it, especially in Series 4 with episodes like Turn Left. I mean, Planet of the Ood is literally about slavery. And that's not even like subtext or anything. That's just what the episode is about. There is no way to watch that episode and not get that. But here, I feel like it just completely falls apart. I don't understand the giggle. So, in the show's own words, the giggle makes everyone on Earth think that they're right all the time. Now, here's my issue with that. Doesn't everybody already think they're right almost all the time anyway? Like, that's why we do the things that we do. Because we believe they're the right things to do. If we think they're wrong, we don't do them. I mean, they say everyone thinks they're right and won't be told otherwise. Does that apply to their own rationale as well? Do people stop questioning whether their first impulse is the morally correct one? It's not really all that clear how it works. In one scene, Kate has her Z-Dex deactivated, a device which stops the giggle's interference. And at first, she's fine, but then she begins like this long tirade about the Doctor being an alien who's infiltrated the human race, conspiracy theories about Donna and Mel both having red hair, and, most bafflingly, makes some ableist comments towards Shirley. How exactly does thinking you're right equate to any of that? Kate knows the Doctor, and she's presumably been working with Mel and Shirley for a long time. The comments that she makes towards Shirley are very reminiscent of things that actual people said after the Star Beast aired, claiming that she's not really disabled because she crosses her legs in one scene, despite the fact that Ruth Madeley is a disabled actress. But see, this is just ignorance. This is just from idiots who don't understand how disabilities work and think that anyone who uses a wheelchair must be paralyzed and rely on it 100% of the time. But surely Kate would know that isn't true. Thinking you're right doesn't mean you unlearn things. And they even showcase things like politicians not caring about their citizens and people being anti-Z-Dex, and they highlight that this is how some people act anyway. But the majority of the human race don't go around doing whatever we want, running riot in the streets. You know why? Because we know that's wrong, and we believe that we are right for not doing that. A human being's action in any given situation is all down to what we think is right. We say what we think is the right thing to say. We do what we think is the right thing to do. That's how our brains work. I fundamentally don't understand what the giggle does that would cause the everyday person to disregard their own moral judgments, if all the episode says is they think they're right. Here's how they maybe could have done it. Maybe have it be everyone starts believing whatever they're told. Because that would work as a social commentary. A lot of people blindly believe whatever they read on the internet, and if everyone did that, then there would be chaos. But see, that wouldn't gel well with the toy maker stuff, would it? Everyone being susceptible to whatever they're told wouldn't give them any kind of advantage in winning games. In fact, it would do the opposite. So, okay, maybe just drop the social commentary aspect altogether and just focus on the toy maker's fascination with humanity. Because what he says is true, we are constantly playing games with each other, whether we mean to or not. That stuff works. I think the issue was Russell was trying to juggle these two ideas at the same time and tried to find a way to fuse them together, but they just don't fit. As a result, thankfully all the stuff with the toy maker is great, but the social commentary stuff just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, shortly after, the Doctor goes on a little rant about how full of hate the human race is. Kind of furthering my point about how a lot of people act like this anyway, regardless of the giggle. And he basically lumps everyone together and kind of just says like, you're all like this to an extent. And okay, yeah, he's got a point, but it's very vitriolic the way he talks. Which is a little ironic. Who is he to talk anyway? No one thinks they're right more than the Doctor. And I kind of found it strange how no one challenged him on this. Most especially Donna. She was always the one to call out his superiority complex whenever he criticized the human race or acted like he was better than them.
Oh, I haven't got slaves.
Who do you think made your clothes?
Is that why you travel around with a human at your side? It's not so you can show them the wonders of the universe. It's so you can take cheap shots.
Sorry?
Don't.
Like, okay, you'll mock him because he presents as male, but he vilifies your entire species? I guess that's alright, is it? But actually, going further, I think that maybe there is a reason why she doesn't. In the following scene, Donna talks to the Doctor about how he's been wearing himself out, and he hasn't stopped. Like I said, this Doctor has been through so much, and he's given himself no time to process it. He doesn't stop, because he can't stop. They even touched upon this in the previous episode, when the Doctor and Donna realized that the only way to get the not things to stop copying them is to just slow right down and essentially switch your brain off. And the Doctor just can't do it. He can't stop. In fact, to save the day in the end, the solution he comes up with is not to stop the countdown, but to speed it up. The Doctor can't stop, because there's no one else to do it for him. He can't deal with his trauma because there's always more that needs to be done. So he just keeps it hidden. And this is why Donna is such a good companion for the Doctor, because she sees past his bravado and the front that he puts up for himself. See, she doesn't have that romantic infatuation with him that a lot of other companions did. In fact, this is the same reason why I much prefer the 12th Doctor and Clara over the 11th Doctor and Clara, as they both had these sort of childish crushes on each other, and it was just weird. Series 7, man, what were they doing? But 12 and Clara didn't have that. They were really good friends. They had a much deeper connection. And because of that, they weren't afraid to challenge each other, call each other out, and as a result, make each other better people. You know, now that I think about it, maybe that's one of the reasons the 12th Doctor is my favourite, because he never had any kind of romantic entanglement with any of his companions. Well, except Riversong, I suppose. And maybe Nardole. But it's abundantly clear that Donna was never like that, and she's always been there to stop the Doctor when he goes too far, ever since her very first episode.
Because sometimes I think you need someone to stop you.
Yeah. And that's exactly what this Doctor needs. Possibly more than ever before. He needs to stop. I mentioned before how this is a very different Doctor to the 10th incarnation. You know, if nothing else, the 14th Doctor is more emotionally mature than the 10th, who was never really comfortable even telling people he loved them. He never said it back to Rose. He got a second chance to, and he still didn't say it. But the 14th Doctor?
I absolutely love her. I loved that man. I loved her. Do I say things like that now?
But the main glaring difference between the 10th Doctor and the 14th Doctor is just how much he's been through. The 10th Doctor had been through a lot, yes, but the 14th had been through all of that and so much more. And that's why I really love the bi-generation, because it allows the Doctor to stop, to rest, and to heal, and not worry about saving the world all the time because there's another Doctor out there to do that. And I just think this is a great way to end this incarnation. I mean, not only because it means that David Tennant doesn't get 3 regenerations, I mean, come on, that'd be crazy, but because it feels like a very fitting ending. This, at least to me, did justify bringing David Tennant back to the show. Rose came back and got her happy ending, Donna came back and got her happy ending, and now, finally, the 10th Doctor came back and got his happy ending. Also, I gotta mention, how fitting is it that in The Runaway Bride, Donna invites the Doctor to have dinner with her family, but he declines? And then the final scene of The Giggle is exactly that, the Doctor having dinner with Donna's family. It's just beautiful. I know that there were a number of complaints that the 60th never really gave a satisfying explanation as to why the Doctor got his old face back. Why did he go back to the same face as the 10th? Well, it seems clear to me why. He did it as a coping strategy. It has been alluded to in the past that the faces that the Doctor changes into aren't completely random all the time. It's somewhat subconscious. And I think, subconsciously, the Doctor wanted to go back. Back to before all the trauma happened. But that was never going to work long term because you can't just ignore all that stuff. You can't bury it and hope it goes away if you just keep going. You need to address it. And so finally, he does. He gets the time to process it all, without needing to keep going. And I think that all of this was a metaphor for the state of the show as a whole. Like I said at the very beginning, Doctor Who felt like it lost its identity. And I also said that the Doctor represents the show itself. See, I've been drip-feeding this to you all throughout the video. It's why I spent so long talking about what happened before the 60th specials, because that stuff needs to be addressed. By the show and by us, the audience. Clearly, ignoring it is not the solution. If you're one of those people who try and erase and ignore the previous eras of the show, headcanon them out of existence, then you are the Doctor here, burying the past, hiding the trauma. coping. A feeble attempt to go back to when things were okay. But it doesn't work like that. You can never go back. You can't. You just can't. Kind of like in the show itself, certain moments in time are fixed and some are in flux. And ironically, because of the name, the flux is not in flux. It happened. The Timeless Child happened. The 50th anniversary happened. And as much as it pains me to say it, Journey to the Center of the TARDIS... Actually, technically that didn't happen, so I suppose I get a free pass on that, but the point still stands. These things have happened. They are facts. You can't change that. So what do? You accept it. You heal. And you move towards a brighter future. Which is exactly what Doctor Who is doing now. And I couldn't be happier for it. And I think that is the lesson to take from the 60th anniversary specials. That is how the 60th quelled my fears. So, what next? Well, we've got a new Doctor who's at least somewhat unburdened by the trauma of his past lives, and we've got a new full series to look forward to, which, if this video comes out on time, should be in exactly 2 weeks' time. Not really sure why they're insisting on calling it Season 1. I mean, it's Series 14. We're not rebooting the show, but whatever. The 15th Doctor made a real splash when he first showed up in the Ghoul, and kind of almost stole all the attention away from the 14th Doctor, but thankfully it was still mostly focused on him. But yeah, I watched the Christmas special, and I think I'm gonna really like him. I mean, the episode itself was fine. I mean, it's a Christmas special. They tend to be a little funky, and you kind of have to suspend your disbelief even further than usual. But yeah, it was good. And if that's anything to go by, it seems like the Timeless Child and the Doctor's actual origins is an idea that Russell is not intent on dropping anytime soon. Kinda seems like that's gonna factor in somewhat to the new season. And I am so looking forward to it. I think that this new series is gonna be great. And one of the episodes being written by Stephen Moffat too? Oh, this is gonna be good. For the first time in a while, it feels like Doctor Who is in safe, capable hands, and I'm so thankful for the 60th anniversary specials for proving that to me. Because I love this show so much, and I want it to be as good as I know it has the capacity to be. So, here's to the new Doctor, and here's to, hopefully, a long future for the one and only Doctor Who. Why did his clothes change though? They never explained the clothes thing, did they? And then the final scene of the Giggle is exactly that. The Doctor having Donna... Donna... God, what a final scene that would be.